When you often think about the best open world games out there, the most obvious selections are games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Breath of the Wild, and Elden Ring. But there are many games in this very saturated genre that fly under the radar and are just never appreciated as much as they should be, despite making variations to the formula and adding their own twist to it all. One such game is the Mad Max video game, released over 8 years ago, but holds up extremely well even today, and is one of the most underrated open world games ever made, never really getting the praise and acclaim it should be rightfully getting. If you enjoy this type of content, consider dropping a like and subbing to the channel, and without further ado, let's get right into it. This section of the video will not contain any spoilers for the game's story, as I expect people who haven't ever played the game will be watching, and thus will just be giving a premise of the game's main story and essentially what you can expect from a story set in the wastelands. I don't know what I originally expected from the story of Mad Max, as I don't really know anything about the source material that is the Mad Max movies or what the message or undertones of the story would be, but it was clearly evident throughout the journey of the game and by the end that the title of Mad Max was surely deserved by our anti-hero protagonist. Max is such an interesting character as he wields no sense of remorse for those around him, and it's clearly obvious to the player that his only motive that constantly keeps him alive in these hellish landscapes, of which are filled with deception and treachery, is that pure human instinct to survive above all else. It's this very human instinct to survive that encourages him to keep pushing, even when Max himself suspects that there is no reason to live anymore. He's not a character that is motivated by his perceptions of the world around him, but instead he relays this distinct primal belief that he needs to continue to survive in this sad world for his own selfish desires, which allows him to continue striving in a world that is hopeless and not worth living in by any metric. The world of Mad Max is in a way one of its best characters, and this sad and lonely landscape of complete darkness and death is always persistent. But Max only persists through the hardships it has due to his inner desire to survive. This is what makes Max himself so interesting. The loss of his loved ones in a previous life makes him reluctant to ever form relationships and connections with others due to a fear of losing it all again. This has made him a hardened man that resists as hard as he can against a redundant world, and he truly wields no empathy for the world he fights trudgingly against. This is what makes the story of Mad Max so interesting, and the story of the game is definitely one of the game's greatest components, filled with a sense of dread and hopelessness that isn't replicated in many games out today, and provides the world of Mad Max such a nice twist from all the generic open worlds out there. The gameplay and open world of Mad Max is what makes it so damn fun to play through, and is the sole reason I recommend this game to you, especially as you can pick the game up for only a few dollars when it's on sale. The gameplay can be cut up into two distinct parts: the combat and the exploration of the game's gigantic open world. Firstly, let's talk about the combat of Mad Max. As is obvious by the gameplay I've been showing throughout the video, the combat of Mad Max is very heavily inspired and derived from the essence of the Arkham style combat. This is honestly one of the reasons I even decided to give the game a go, as I was interested to see how the game would be able to put its own twist on the Arkham style combat that is quite prevalent now, especially in series like Marvel's Spider-Man. But Mad Max doesn't feel like a direct copy or imitation of the Arkham combat. Rather, it does enough to differentiate itself from the system and apply a new coat of paint over it. In many instances, the combat of this game felt a lot more calculated and slower than the adrenaline pumping and hectic combat that other games inspired by the Arkham series offered. There are two sides to the combat within the game as well. We've got the traditional combat on foot, which is what you expect, with strikes, heavy strikes and parrying, in addition to chain finishers which allow you to do awesome combo moves in order to take down your enemies after a succession of hits without getting hit yourself. But you've also got a shotgun which also diversifies the mix of combat within the game. You'll often have minimal bullets within this shotgun, and you'll need to scavenge around in order to get enough bullets in order to successfully take down a new combat zone or area. Thus, it isn't an alternate means of combat, rather complementary to the traditional combat of the game, as you're able to use the bullets in your shotgun to take down your enemies much faster. It's a very fun combat system, and although at the start it feels a lot more campy scrappy and slower than what you're used to, it ramps up considerably after you get a couple hours into the game, making each combat scenario in the game an absolute blast to play through. Now I want to briefly talk about the vehicle combat of the game, as it's also a super fun component of which differentiates the game to a lot of other open worlds as well. I personally didn't engage in the vehicle combat of the game too much outside the main story, but of what I did, the game's use of vehicles in a combat scenario was very fun to play through. The vehicle has been equipped with a variety of gadgets for the player to mess around with and kill your enemies with. I'll preface this by saying that there is a lot of scavenging within the game's open world in order to aptly upgrade your vehicle and the different gadgets you make use of within the combat, but this isn't too bad as the story missions and bases you clear out provide plenty of materials. On the vehicle, you've got a harpoon to pull out drivers or to take an enemy vehicle's wheels, and also a thunderpoon, which is an explosive weapon that can be shot at enemy vehicles and objects, which allows you to properly clear a base or convoy when needed. The driving in the game also feels extremely smooth and fluid, which leads me into the game's open world and its exploration. The open world of Mad Max is beautiful as it is haunting. The vistas of the buildings within the distance to the plain of nothingness of a desert that stretches so far you can't see anything beyond its reaches for miles and miles. The world of Mad Max is so well designed and well crafted, and it is easily one of the most immersive open world games I have ever played. I haven't consumed any other Mad Max media, but I can definitely say without a doubt that the world in this game perfectly captures the loneliness and wasteland nature of the setting in absolute abundance. The world is haunting in a way where there is no sanity in the inhabitants you interact with, and you yourself aren't exactly considered sane in the traditional sense. It's a wonder to explore the open world of Mad Max, and its various regions and people are amazing to interact with. Much like Days Gone and its bike, the car in Mad Max also feels like your only true companion. Much of the story focuses on the development of Max's car, but the more you upgrade your car and your journey continues on its path, the car itself becomes a much more viable option for exploration and roaming around the landscapes of the game. Things such as getting out of your car to retrieve petrol for your vehicle in order to continue trudging across the wastelands of Mad Max is a small detail that I absolutely love and which highly differentiates the game from other open worlds and their traversal. Overall, the combat components of Mad Max and the exploration of its stunning but haunting open world makes it such a blast to play through, and I definitely recommend this game based on the merits of these sole components alone. As I've reverberated throughout the video, I highly recommend you to pick this game up and play it if you haven't already done so, as Mad Max truly does provide something different to many other open worlds out there and has gone under the radar for so long, especially considering its very small asking price. The game is an absolute steal, of which I think you should definitely play, especially if you are a fan of open world games. Anyway, that's it from me for today's video. If you enjoyed, consider dropping a like and subbing to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.